Welcome to the Forge Truth Podcast, where we are building great men as God defines greatness. Forge is a movement of men with a mission to help all men realize they are the deeply beloved, redeemed sons of the Most High God. I'm your producer, Zach, and I'm here to discuss the issues that affect men the most with our two hosts, Dr. Pete Alwinson, lifelong pastor and leader of Forge, and Jayson Quiñones, bishop of Core Faith Church in Oviedo, Florida. Men, welcome to the show.
Hey, here we are.
We are here.
We're ready to go.
It's freezing.
It's freezing.
What's up with this, man?
31 degrees in Florida, right? But when it gets down into the 60s, we complain.
Yeah, well, I asked Pete if he would do something about this, and he said no. And come on, Pete. Like, don't you have any authority with the...
Hey, real men don't worry about a little cold weather.
Okay, well, what are the other
I
categories?
just threw you under the bus. There it is.
Okay, well, we're not here alone, and I'm excited to announce our guest today. His name is Greg Love. Pete, you know him better than I do. Why don't you introduce him?
Greg Love. Greg, we've been friends for a long time. I'm glad to have you at the table here, and I'm glad you joined us. You got to tell us a little bit about what you do, and I don't know how many years we've known each other. We know long enough to have dirt on each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Long enough to do that.
Since before Forge was Forge.
Did we know each other before that?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So over 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you got to tell us what you do. Tell us about your family, but you got to explain the mustache because it's an awesome mustache.
Thanks. It's real easy. I just don't shave there. So, so I'm Greg Love. I have a wonderful wife, Kathy, and two daughters, Maddie and Sophie. I'm a local firefighter for the city of Orlando. At this chapter of life, it will soon be wrapping up, as you and I've talked about a lot. But it's kind of a loaded question because I'm also an alligator hunting guide.
Yep.
And God has really blessed that and given me an opportunity to use that as a ministry as well. And for years and years, I ran a gym out of my barn in my backyard. And so I've gotten to, I think I started that in maybe 08 or 09.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to do a lot of coaching and mentoring through that, and I've always gone to church. I've always been
always? Is it raised in the church?
Raised in the church, wow. Yes, sir. But it really wasn't until I would say like June 8th of 2021 would be my specific date that I can point to where I really had what I would consider a renewal or a born again experience. Which is interesting because at that point I had already been leading men's ministry for my church, coming to Forge for many, many years. But all of those things were the foundational building blocks, they led me to the moment. They weren't, they're not garbage by any means. They're the foundation I was standing on, So I think sometimes when we have those moments, we can look back at the old stuff and just wonder why that season was so long. And it's funny because I used to ask in certain circles, how do I get this Holy Spirit? Like I was trying to catch it like a wild hog. But the reality is what it took for me was surrender, and as seems often the case, it took a little bit of desperation for me to get there.
So you would say 2021, but would you say that you had an intellectual belief in not only in God, but in salvation in Christ?
Oh, 100%. I was a believer. And again, I'm not to get too deep in the woods on theology, I guess, depending on which denomination you are or what your particular system is. But all of that stuff, I went to Christian school. I had my stepdad was actually mentored me by discipling me and making me go through the discipline side of church, and setting that pattern for me. So I knew all of that, even went to a Christian college, all of that stuff. So again, to your point, like all the intellectual side, I knew. I was reading, doing my dog back before it was cool. But it just, I wanted more, which is actually what led me to Forge way back in the beginning. I got to tell you guys a little quick story about how God works. So I go to a local church, and we were involved. My wife and I, our families have been there forever. Hers longer than mine. And I was praying for something more, a group that spoke to me. There was men's ministry in the church, but it really wasn't something that I thought. I was young, and I just didn't think it would speak to me. It was something maybe my dad would go to or something like that, but it just wasn't. I was like grown and married and had kids, but I was just kind of between the cracks. And some of that was my own doing, right? Because pride, or I have other things to do, all that stuff. And so I'm praying for this something else. And one year I get way back in the beginning when this was called, it had a whole different name and everything, and we were meeting at Canterbury. I got a text on a group text from a guy whose number I didn't even have saved in my phone, but I recognized two of the numbers. The names were in my phone. So I reached out to them. I said, hey, and it was an invitation to come to this new group meeting, Key Life Men, it was called, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
So I reached out to the two guys on the side. I'm like, who is sending me this? And it was Brad Merrill.
Oh, is that right?
And they were like, well, you know Brad, he's this and that. And I knew of Brad, but I didn't really know Brad. So then I reached out to him on the side and was like, what is this thing? And he told me a little bit about it. And so I showed up on a Tuesday morning at Canterbury Retreat, and I walk in, and you're talking about shooting guns and wearing boots and jeans. And I'm like, I think I'm in my place. And I think it was probably like 12 or 15 of us in there. It was not big at all.
It was not big. Yeah.
And then it grew crazily to where we are now. Yeah. But so that's kind of my introduction into men's ministry and Forge.
Yeah.
And it just has blossomed from there. And it's really what I see myself doing now every day, but even more in my retirement or rewirement.
Yeah.
So
no doubt you're an influencer of men. We're here to sort of talk about that whole idea of mentoring and how we grow. And you're doing a lot of that now with men. Was that a part of the firefighting? Were you raised with mentoring? How you're doing that a lot now with men, and through your alligator hunting ministry is what I call it. It's a business, but it's a ministry.
Sure.
And by the way, this dude gets huge alligators. I mean, 11, 12 footers, big dudes. So Greg is your alligator hunter par excellence.
Yeah, I'm definitely I didn't know you did that. So I've always wanted to go hunting. Nobody ever invites me. I'm not looking at anyone who goes and doesn't invite me. But anyway, there it is.
Let's talk off the podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
I could use a guy like you.
Hey, man, I definitely want to do that. That's so cool. Can I, before we jump into the mentoring side, because you touched on this, but I'm thinking that there may be a guy listening that hasn't come across that line of faith and really does want, and he wants more.
Yeah.
He knows that there's more than just, and I hate to say this because I don't think this is a just, like I hate when people say, well, all you can do is pray. I'm like, no. You can pray. And so when I say just studying the Bible or whatever the case is, just doing these, going through the motions, and you kind of alluded to it, but I just want to just press in a little bit on that. What was that, like that moment in 2021 where you had an encounter with the Lord or something? Like, what was it for you that?
Yeah. So it was, so to jump in a little bit to the mentoring, I have a really good friend, Danny, who I'd been walking with for years and talking about life and ministry, and both of us growing as we're mentoring each other, really. We talk about iron sharpens iron, and the fire team and all of the things that the catchphrases we've learned and the tools we have in our toolbox to grow in this faith. And I was at a really down point because I think what I realized was, so I never really made too many mistakes as a fireman. Certainly, I made plenty of mistakes. They just weren't public, right? And then I was on the dive team, and this is a very short deal, but and so I was doing a recovery, a car recovery, and checking the car and things like that. And for some reason, I was swimming in a circle, and and there's a very distinct pattern. And anyway, it led me to a very lonely, quiet place, even though my crew handled it beautifully. My lieutenant was there for me, all of these things. My wife, of course, I told her a little bit about what was going on, but my pride, it was my pride. I could not believe that everyone saw me mess up. Right. And no one got hurt. Everybody was like, man, it happens. Don't worry. It was me. It was my own pride bursting, my own,
I remember when that happened.
Yeah, you and I talked for a long time in your truck. Yeah. And it took a brother coming alongside me who I knew and trusted and was, maybe a little further along in his faith than me to challenge me. I had what I would consider a very real encounter with the enemy in my own house. And in the Sonny's parking lot right here in Oviedo, we're praying and man, I came undone. I had never really cried. I'd never, a lot of things. And it kind of all came undone there in the Sonny's parking lot. And man, I mean, I was even when I feel like I had received the Holy Spirit and I was feeling new, I was sobbing and I was completely light. Like my heart actually felt like it could take a full beat, but Jayson, I couldn't stand up.
Yeah.
And so I was like draped over my buddy Danny in the Sonny's parking lot at lunchtime where I go quite a bit. So everybody's like, I'm like Norm from Cheers. People are like, hey, Greg, when I walk in there. Well, I mean, I'm draped over my buddy's not that tall and I'm snotting in his ear hole and all sorts of things, and it's just a blubbering mess right there. And I'm so grateful for having a brother that would walk with me through that. And it wasn't a one-time thing. I don't think it ever is. Like I said, all of the life lived before that. Yeah. Sharpened me right to that moment, to that point, again, and going back to the discipline side of making me go to church as a boy. My stepdad stepped in and he did that. My real dad died when I was 6, but I was raised by my stepdad, Jack, who is my dad, at this point.
Yeah.
And he fostered that relationship even against my will sometimes, because every kid, especially boys, don't want to go to school, go to church every Sunday. And it was more than just that, but that was the nuts and bolts of the discipline. And I heard someone at one of the leadership things several years ago say this regarding our dog, and you can extrapolate it out to our walk is, out of desperation, I created a discipline that has led to desire.
That's right. That's right.
And I'll never forget at that leadership meeting when I think his name is Preston was the guy who actually told us that about his dog.
Right.
And I use it so much now I steal it. Right. But,
that's right. It's yours now.
But, but it really meant something to me because all of that old stuff is not garbage.
That's right.
It's what got me there. And
God builds on the foundation. Thank you for pushing that, Bishop, with Greg, because Greg's this big old tall man's man, and we've been taught to be tough, and we've been taught not to cry, and we've been taught to make it happen. If it's going to be, it's up to me. Yeah. And I think for us to really understand the gospel, we have to be brought to our knees like the Apostle Paul was. Yeah. At the end of ourselves, the end of our pride and arrogance. And that's our ego is what often gets in the way of a true relationship with the King.
Yeah. So it's hard to be proud and surrender.
Yeah.
Well, you're either going to humble yourself or you're going to be humbled.
Yeah.
And I love and the reason why I wanted to press that is because I think a lot of times for guys, their religion is almost empty. It's going through the motions.
It's religion.
Right.
And it's not intentional.
Right. No, it's like, okay, well, I'm doing this. Okay, I'm doing this. And I mean, guys, I would just say, man, listen to this testimony. And if your heart is aching for more, if you're feeling that emptiness, man, don't ignore that. Like call on God because he'll give you more. I love it because, you didn't talk about, it may be funny that I'm saying I love this, but, you didn't talk about, oh man, I started speaking in tongues or I fell out. And I'm okay with all that, because I'm a charismatic guy. But what I know is that encountering God is that. Because it's being undone like Isaiah was. It's being transformed by a God who is not, sitting up in heaven, just, drinking lemonade. But anyway. So,
we're not playing around with this. This is real for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've had these experiences and then men in your life who were there at those moments. So you were not alone, but basically got to sense that fellowship. And that helped you in those like deep times. Do you feel like that was God placing those people in your life?
Without a doubt. I look back at my life, like I said, my real dad died. Well, so we talk about in men's ministry, the father wound.
Right.
And I talk about this a lot with guys. My dad died when I was 6. It was an unintentional wound. Still a wound.
Sure.
And
Still
it
a wound.
affected my 4 older brothers and my younger brother way differently than it affected me because they all had different relationships. My one brother is 9 months old. He doesn't remember my dad at all. I barely remember. And my older brothers obviously had a much different relationship because they're older. But God placed in my life a stepdad who immediately stepped in, not knowing what to do with a 6-year-old at all, and having kind of a crazy father himself, like the whole parental relationship for him was not perfect either, and it isn't for any of us. And so, God has definitely placed those types of men in my life. And then I go into, growing up and sports, and then the fire service. And one of the things about mentorship that is really apparent to me and cool is that you can have a different mentor depending on what the subject matter is. So I've had different. We say in the fire service, you have guys that you look up to that you would emulate, and then you have guys that you would never do that. And you can learn from both of them.
Negative examples.
That's right.
Positive
That's
examples.
right. You can learn from both of them.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in my spiritual walk. I've been so blessed to have men in my life stick with me, even though I question them, or because I'm a questioner. I'm a conspiracy theorist. It's widely known.
Maybe we should do an episode about that.
Yeah. Conspiracy theory. Yeah.
But I struggle with not being able to question. So it takes a special kind of man to be able to mentor a guy like me when I was younger, especially because I was a little more brash about it. I remember telling my pastor when I was going to marital counseling, if I'm not here on Sunday, I'll be in the woods where I see God, and he's like, I won't use the word he used at that time, but he said, that's bull scubulon. I'll see you in church on Sunday.
Yeah. He called you out.
Oh, 100%.
I love it.
And he has also become a mentor to me, Wally. I've been so fortunate, and it's kind of crazy to talk about mentorship with Pete here, because obviously Pete is, you guys probably don't know this, but I know you've seen me around Pete enough, but Pete is my mentor. When I look at this, one of my mentors.
Sure.
You've
had good ones.
For sure. And I'm so grateful that God put you in my life, that God brought me to Forge, and how it's affected not just my spiritual walk, but the spiritual walk of my family, and given me the ability to lead better. It's helped me to understand my identity, because identity is something so hard. The first thing everybody says is, well, hey, how you doing? I'm Greg. What do you do for a living? Instead of who are you? And I do it to people also, but I struggled, I think, with identity partially because of, I moved a lot as there's a ton of, everybody's got a story, right? My dad dying left me a whole different side of the family that I didn't really ever see, and all that stuff. And so everybody's got a story. And, but coming to know my identity of who I am because of Christ, a beloved son of the Most High God, it's been not just life-changing, but life-giving. And it's allowed me then to reach out to other men and younger guys, I call them the Forge kids, Jared and Will and JJ and Sammy, and I'm still meeting with those guys, and I have a blast. And Yeah.
So you went from sort of this idea of what you've been experiencing with him and how his grace and his love for you has unleashed you into other guys' lives. It's sort of a natural process, isn't it?
Yeah. For sure.
I mean, what would we say to other men about mentor? Because we hear that a lot: mentor, disciple, develop. What is the essential difference between mentoring and discipleship even? I mean, when you mentor, are you doing anything different than discipling, or is it the same thing? Are they related? What do y'all think?
So if I had to answer that, and I don't want to be the one to have to answer that, but when I think of a mentor, it's someone that is ahead of you and in some area of your life. And so they're kind of like a coach in a way, a springboard, someone for advice or something like that in that area of life. Whereas a discipleship is making a disciple. So someone who is where you want to be, who you want to be, and coming under them and like headed in that direction. And so like, that's how I think of it. So like with Jesus, he has his disciples, they are with him in all of his life, learning how to become like him. Whereas like a mentor is like, okay, this is a part of you that I think I can speak to and strengthen and bolster and build up. And but a discipleship is more kind of all encompassing, headed in a direction.
So mentorship is a little more subject specific, maybe.
Perhaps, or just something that is needs building up within you, like personality wise, or like strengths and skills, or anything like that. Mentorship can come alongside, and different mentors are going to have different relationships with you, different strengths, and speak to you in different ways. And that's why really with mentorship, the more the merrier,
Yeah, good. Now that's an interesting distinction.
Yeah.
What I hear you talking about, Greg, is that your mentorship has really leaned into more discipleship too.
Oh, for sure.
They're definitely
I think they
related.
can overlap.
They can overlap. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say to Zach's point is, I think it depends on the scenario, right? But what I think is a mentor can be a discipler, but not every mentor is a disciple maker.
Good point.
So
Good
I think for us, like in our context, when we're talking about mentoring, I think we are talking more about discipleship, because a mentor, and like when I'm looking at your guys' relationship, I'm assuming, because I know you and I know you well enough, you've probably spoken into his marriage, into his parenting, into his leadership and things like that. And you've been an example of a Christ follower. So I think that's part of it. So, and I would say, I think as I'm talking, because, I like to process out loud, I think discipleship, the key difference, discipleship has the spiritual component. So a mentor doesn't necessarily have to have a spiritual component, but if you're going to be a disciple maker, then you've got to have Christ at the center of that.
That's right. So we might even talk about spiritual mentorship, and that when I think of a mentor, I think when I first connected with Steve Brown years ago, it was because I heard his sermons, and he helped unleash me in communication. So I said, I don't have a mentor. Would you mentor me specifically in communication? And then leading the church. How do you? And so it was subject specific,
right?
But it expanded into other areas.
You should ask them to do voice training for you.
It's so funny. I was gonna say the same thing. No, like it's unfair, right? Like
on the radio, I asked Steve, "When you die, can I have your voice?" And he said no. But so what can we learn about what it takes to do spiritual mentoring with men? The first thing that Greg hits me with is that when the Lord is working in your heart, you inevitably want to pass that on to another guy. That was sort of a natural process for you.
I love coaching.
Yeah.
And I think I have a hard time calling myself a mentor. I do. Like maybe it's a formal title. The title alone makes me nervous, but coaching, I'm good with that. I've been a personal trainer for a number of years and running, that kind of lifting all these different things, training the new guys.
You've helped me on some of those things too. Yeah.
Training new guys in the fire service, things like that. And even when I'm doing the gator stuff, even I have set it up so that I'm just really coaching the clients, because I'm the kind of guy, if I'm chartering a boat to go fishing in the Pacific Ocean, I just need a ride. I don't want somebody that's going to set the hook for me, like a 6-year-old girl. Here you go, reel it in.
Yeah.
I want someone that's going to coach me through that. And that's really what I do, even on the gator boat. And so, yes, I help them find it, but I'm teaching them the whole time of what to do. And so it's funny, because when I have return clients, they're almost, they don't need me, but
You've developed.
Yeah. I don't want to catch the gator for you. I want you to catch it. And I want to have fun watching you. Like at this point, turkey hunting, I could go my whole life without killing another turkey, but I love being there when someone else kills theirs, and being a part of helping them. And so I think there's a real coaching element to it, which is important, that the person being mentored is willing to be coached. Because what I've also found in this, which is hard for guys like us that are, everybody in this room is mentoring someone, even if it's your wife and kids, but especially men specific. Where I do struggle, I tell everybody, I'm really good with short-term patient care as a paramedic. I'm not good with long-term patient care. Like, I don't want to be your family doctor, So I have no problem helping you, but I can't carry you, because Jesus tells the disciples, dust off your sandals, keep moving. If they don't want to hear, keep moving. And I struggled with that too, because, with some of my closest friends and people in my life, if you're a fireman, everything's a fire, right?
Yeah.
If you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
That's right.
So in the fire service, we have what we call a fog nozzle, which you can make into a straight stream. And so with my buddies, and it's funny, because you're the people who kind of know you, or maybe don't really know you, take things like this better than the people who knew you before, when you changed, or because they've known you your whole life, and they're not going to put up with it. I was not intending to, but I was in a fire. If you have like a room fire, you shoot it with a straight stream at the base of the fire to put it out. But if you have a fuel fire and you do that same thing, because fuel floats on water, you just push it.
You spread it.
So what I was doing was I was shooting all my buddies with a straight stream. It was my fault.
Yeah.
What I should have done is a nice wide fog pattern, or rained it down on them instead of just blasting them. But it was solely out of excitement.
Yeah.
It was not in any way. So you got to be careful in your relationships too, because now that I have this relationship with the Holy Spirit, with God, with Christ, I want to grab my friends by the shirt collar and be like, don't you want this too?
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, easy, tranquilo, bro. And that's just my personality, is when, how do you know people do CrossFit? Because all they talk about is CrossFit.
Yeah. Right.
That's who I am. And so I have had to learn.
That's great. He's a straight shooter.
Yeah. I've had to be real careful, with and learn a lot.
And that's a great principle to learn about mentoring others. Once you catch fire, go gently to some extent.
Sure.
Find those that really want to go with you, and then go with those.
That's right.
In particular, right? There's always going to be people that push back. Say, Greg, you weren't interested in this before. Now you're all fired up. What's going on here?
Right.
Yeah.
Some of that is being on fire over a period of time helps, and so they don't see this was a one and done. That's like a mountaintop experience.
Now they know, because that's been several years ago.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And
now they know.
I can't shake it.
Greg, can't shake it, doesn't want to shake it.
Yeah.
I love that.
All right, this conversation is going great, but I am going to cut us off just because we try to keep these podcasts about the same length. But the good news is we're going to come back for a part 2 next week and continue the conversation with Greg. But in the meantime, I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of the Forged Truth Podcast. If you have any questions or comments on what we talked about today, you can email the show at forge@forgetruth.com. And Pete, why don't you lay a challenge down for our men today?
Well, this is so good. And Greg, great to have you. And I tell you, I love what God is doing in you and through you. And men, the joy of experiencing the grace of God in our own life and then passing it on cannot be underestimated. It is a joyful thing to mentor another guy. So get out there and do it.